We have a double hurdle to overcome today in hearing what God has to say through our first reading. First, it deals with laws. So as soon as we realize it isn't from the part of Exodus with plagues of frogs and locusts and desert chases, we tend to tune it out. And second, it deals with the Ten Commandments. And our mind here has a tendency to say, oh, I know this already. And yet again, another push to tune it out. Although if we're honest with ourselves, we would probably be happy if no one asked us to try and name all 10. So I want to start by giving us what might be a new angle to look at the book of Exodus in general and at this part in particular. And that is from the perspective of a wedding, a relationship. The book of Exodus as a whole is God wooing, winning over, and wedding himself to the people of Israel. And in that way, we can see all these events differently. The start of the book, with all those frogs and locusts, is the courtship. God was trying to show that all these physical things that the Egyptians worshipped as divine, were not worthy of Israel's love, and not worthy of the Egyptians' love either, for that matter. Things, objects, like golden calves, should not be the recipients of love that was truly meant for God. Once he wins them over and leads them into the desert, he takes them well out of their way to Mount Sinai, which is the place of the wedding between God and his people. And finally, at the end of the book, they spend time preparing the tabernacle for God to dwell among them, reminding us of newlyweds starting to build their home together. In this context, we can see the middle part, the wedding, in a new light. These commandments originally were not even called commandments. They were called God's words. And they are, in a sense, the wedding vows between God and his people. God vows himself to them and asks them to vow themselves to him through the words inscribed on those tablets. This also casts a new light on the fact that after Moses was on the mountain receiving the wedding vows on the tablets, vows that start with, "You shall not carve idols for yourselves," Moses returns to find the people worshiping a golden calf. In a sense, they were breaking one of their wedding vows on the day of the wedding. But overall, I think what we should take from this is that God's commandments, his words, are not about arbitrary rules, but are meant to be the foundation of a lifelong, committed, loving relationship. This brings us to Paul, who wisely stated, "Jews demand signs and Greeks look for wisdom, but we proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles." God, both in Egypt and in the Gospels, worked great signs, from parting the Red Sea to healing and feeding thousands. And he gave great wisdom in guiding and teaching his people. But that was not the end that God wanted for his people. The spousal relationship that God has always desired is built on gift of self, which is why the Jews looking for signs and the Greeks looking for wisdom were confused by the cross. The cross is only the greatest sign and the greatest wisdom in the context of God's great self-sacrificing love. If we are not looking for or expecting to find that love, it is very hard to make sense of the cross. The spousal image is also helpful for our gospel. This account takes place during the Passover, the annual celebration of the events of the Exodus, a sort of wedding anniversary, if you will. And during this anniversary, during time the couple has set aside to be with each other, one spouse, Israel, is clearly just going through the motions, doing the bare minimum, and not even bothering to hide it. For many at that time, Passover, their anniversary, was no longer about a relationship. They put in their offering, their 2 turtle doves or a lamb, their payment, and in a sense they renewed the contract on their divine insurance plan. Unfortunately, we're not all that different today. Too often when we turn to God, we turn to him for one of 2 reasons, for signs or for wisdom. We want wisdom telling us what to do or what to expect, or we want a sign, a miracle on our terms and on our schedule. How often and how sincerely do we turn to Him not as a miracle vending machine and not as an oracle, but as our beloved? We should approach our annual celebration and commemoration of the new Exodus in Holy Week, not just going through the motions, but truly spending time with our beloved, and remembering this bit of wisdom from Father Pedro Arrupe. Nothing is more practical than finding God, than falling in love in a quite absolute, final way. What you are in love with, what seizes your imagination, will affect everything. It will decide what will get you out of bed in the morning, what you do with your evenings, how you spend your weekends, what you read, whom you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you with joy and gratitude. Fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything.